Hi everyone and welcome. I hope you're having a great week. I want to talk about a topic that makes people feel very disgusted and confused about Islam. You can see apologists making articles on Western media, or you can also see Muslims on Muslim platforms trying to get rid of misconceptions about this issue by completely ignoring factual Islamic sources. It is a topic that is occasionally discussed in the West, especially in connection with Muslim immigration. Sex slavery and rape. I won't go much into the rulings about rape because I think that's a huge topic that needs further analysis. But I'm going to focus on how Islamic sources allow the disgusting practice of having sex slaves. I wanted to say women that are considered property, but that would just be women, so. According to our times and common sense, if you have non-consensual sex with a woman, no matter who she is, that is rape. If you have a servant at home and you think you can just make her have sex with you because she is your servant, that is rape. If a woman depends on you in any way and you have sex with her without her wanting it, or despite her explicitly being against it, that is rape. Sex with prisoners and captives, not free humans, would be considered rape. All of this is common sense, no excuses. According to Islam, it doesn't really look that way. Islam is not so tough on men. It understands that men might quite have the desire to have sex slaves and to have sex with them. That's no big surprise, since men are considered higher than women anyway in Islam. And the Quran makes that very, very clear in multiple verses. The Quran says that men are above women, that good women are obedient. The Quran and the Hadith make it very clear that a husband can beat her if she repeatedly shows disobedience. It's also unsurprising since the Quran describes wives as men's place of sowing seed, that you can approach when and however you want. So what does even anyone expect about sex slaves? When we talk about female slaves and captives of war, ISIS released a disgusting, horrible pamphlet in 2014 explaining how female slaves are to be treated according to Islam. It is truly disgusting when you read it through. But it was well sourced and explained that female captives are under complete control of their owners. That publication, released by the terrorists, is in accordance with Islam. It mentions some points about sex slavery, such as that non-Muslim women can be taken captive and used as slaves. It points out that Islamic scholars agree on that, and that is right. That their owners can have sex with them as they wish, that the owner can buy, sell, or give the slave. That men can have sex with those slaves if they didn't reach puberty, but are able to have sex. That men can beat the slaves, but only for disciplinary reasons. But it also mentions that freeing slaves, especially if they convert to Islam, is a good deed. I know all of this sounds disgusting and horrifying, but if you look further into it, you can see that ISIS did indeed follow Islamic teachings. If you are in a state of war or in any form of battle with non-Muslims and heretics, it is totally Islamic to take captives among them and to distribute the women among the Muslims. And to go further, Islam allows to have sex with those slaves, even if they are married, because Islam considers their marriage to other people, to polytheists, invalid. This is made clear in a hadith, which tells that the Muslims were in a fight, and the Muslims were refraining from having sex with the captives of war, because they were already married to the polytheist enemies. When they brought this issue to Muhammad, Allah suddenly revealed a Quran verse mentioning which women are forbidden to marry and to have sex with, and then it goes on and makes an exception for those your right hands possess. Another example is Chapter 70, verse 30, where the Quran orders to protect your chastity and your private parts, except from your wives and those your right hands possess. What is interesting about the hadith is that the Muslims, the followers of Muhammad, refrained from having sex with those slaves, with those captives of war, because they were already married. And then Muhammad invents a new Quran verse which allows that. So it is originally Islamic. As a side note, the term used here, what your right hands possess, is a direct translation of the Arabic and refers to slaves. That's a common Islamic and at that time Arabic expression for slaves. Slavery is a normal thing in Islam. It existed from the beginning and it never indicated any end to it, no matter what moderate Muslims claim. Also, and this is quite interesting, the Quran clearly divides humans into three categories: free men, slaves, and women. I will make a comprehensive video on slavery very soon. Let's come back to sex slaves. As said, a Muslim can have sex with his female slave. Some moderate Muslims take a hadith and try to explain that it's actually not allowed. It is one specific hadith which explains that a man had sex with his wife's female slave and that Muhammad ordered to punish him. That's very dirty because the hadith talks about a man having sex with his wife's slave, not his own. That is forbidden in Islam. You cannot have sex with someone else's slave. That's evil. Only your own slaves. As you can see, moderate Muslims value context very much when you criticize Islam, but many of them don't even care about context when it comes to defending Islam. If you want to see a source which mentions sex with slaves in practice, there is also one that mentions how a Muslim came to Muhammad to tell him that he has a slave girl at home who carries water at home, and that he has sexual intercourse with her. Muhammad is totally fine with that, and they only talk about whether getting her pregnant or not is fine, and Muhammad says that it doesn't matter. Buying and selling slaves is also totally Islamic. Proof can be found in the hadith books of Sahih Bukhari, which is the most important, or the second most important source after the Quran. In those, there are multiple verses saying that Muhammad bought and sold male and female slaves, and also that he owned a lot of female and male slaves. Muhammad also had a weird sex issue with one of his female slaves that his wives disagreed with at some time, but let me leave that to a dedicated video. As for the age of sexual interaction, there is really no restriction, no source at all in Islamic scriptures. The only thing ever mentioned is that sexual intercourse should only occur if the woman is able to have sex. So the ISIS pamphlet is not wrong about having sex with slaves that didn't reach puberty yet. Disgusting. Sex slaves are also obligated to have sex only with the owner. The owner can have sex with an unlimited number of slaves and his wives. Not at the same time. Stop fantasizing. But a slave is not allowed to have sex with anyone else, not even with another slave. Other hadith also mention that Muhammad did indeed distribute captives of war as slaves to his followers. In one hadith, a companion of Muhammad asks him for a slave girl, and Muhammad tells him to pick any of the girls. To be fair, Muhammad also said that he never beats his slaves, which makes him a good guy. But in another hadith, he also says that you shouldn't beat your wives the way you beat your slaves, which implicitly allows the beating of slaves. That's why ISIS says that it's okay to beat them, as long as it's only for discipline. What is also quite disturbing about all of this is one of the final points that ISIS made in that pamphlet, and it's totally in accordance with Islam. According to Islam, a slave can be offered freedom for two reasons: marrying them and conversion. Now think about that a bit deeper. No one wants to be a slave, especially not the sex slave of some desert warlord who invents divine verses in his mind. By offering them freedom through marriage, you're offering them something that they probably don't really want, but also something that they probably shouldn't refuse. But Muhammad doesn't really care about the consent of women in general anyway, since these are also his words. Her silence is her consent. But the second thing about conversion, no one wants to be a slave, but it's considered the right thing to free a slave if they convert to Islam. And slaves are offered the option to convert to Islam and to be freed. That's a very ugly concept of conversion to a religion that you have to stay in for the rest of your life. So much for no compulsion in religion. As you can see, ISIS, with its declaration, is not very far from Islamic teachings in this, if at all. If you look at such publications from ISIS and you feel totally disgusted because they are so twisted, then you should probably ask yourself why you are so tolerant of Islam, if you are still tolerant of Islam. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please don't forget to subscribe, to like, and to share. My channel is not monetized and never will be, so you can watch everything without ads. If you want to support my cause, you can do so on Patreon. The link is below in the description. Thank you all so much for your time and your support. Spread this knowledge. Inform every single person about Islam so that everyone knows what this religion is about. Have a great weekend and stay away from Islam.